You are in the ladies' room with Dr. Donica, the only public ladies' room you can enter anytime without ever waiting online. I'm your host, Dr. Donica Moore. We'll be having real conversations with real women about really intimate issues. They may be embarrassing, sad, or funny, but they will always be interesting and informative. You know, like the best conversations you've had in ladies' rooms with your best friends, or total strangers and a physician. Please join us. Hello, and welcome to another wonderful episode of In the Ladies' Room with Dr. Donica. Today, I have an incredible guest who will literally take your breath away, Chloé Temtchine. She is a YouTube sensation, an award-winning singer-songwriter. But as with many people, her life took a turn at one point. In 2013, she had just finished an album with Smash Mouth's Grammy-nominated Greg Camp. She was all set to go on a world tour with him. And at a very young age, she suffered severe shoulder and chest pain, was rushed to the emergency room, and was found to be in congestive heart failure. She was then diagnosed with pulmonary arterial hypertension, or PAH, which is a rare and fatal lung condition. She was told she had little time left to live and that she'd have to be on oxygen for the rest of her life. Now, you would think that would normally sideline just about anybody. And it's certainly an understatement to say that her world was turned upside down in an instant. But she wasn't completely surprised because she spent the previous 5 years dealing with a whole host of physical symptoms from shortness of breath, chest pain, dry cough, racing heartbeat, fatigue, and water retention that left many doctors at some of the most prestigious medical institutions confused. During this time, she was diagnosed and misdiagnosed with everything from a pulmonary embolism to sarcoidosis to other autoimmune diseases. And of course, one physician even suggested that she see a psychiatrist. All of them were wrong. But what's amazing about Chloé, or one of the amazing things about her, is that she doesn't want her story to be just about the years of doctor hopping, misdiagnoses, or landing in the critical care unit. She wants her story to be about what happened next and where she is today. And that's what we're going to talk about. 7 years after being released from the critical care unit, many more days than doctors thought would be possible. She's writing music, performing, and using her talent to inspire and empower others who are affected with not only pulmonary arterial hypertension, but many other chronic illnesses. During this time, she's released 3 albums. My personal favorite, Be Brave, Strangers, and Lead Me Home. She wrote the song Be Brave shortly after she was released from the hospital. To her credit, she donates proceeds from the sales to the Pulmonary Hypertension Association. And I love the video for her single Breathe, which features several children with PAH and the overarching message that sometimes you have to lose your breath to breathe. Chloé, you take my breath away. Welcome to the ladies' room.
Thank you so much. I love it. Welcome to the ladies' room, my favorite place. The most important place to be.
Absolutely, especially now in the time of the coronavirus outbreak when we have a national shortage of toilet paper.
Oh my gosh, you never think about that.
I never would have thought. While everybody else was stocking up on toilet paper, I was stocking up on wine and ice cream.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And I'm not supposed to be eating chocolate. And I'm like, well, if the world's going down, maybe I should just stock up on my favorite thing in the world, you know?
So why are you not supposed to eat chocolate?
Oh, well, welcome to, this brings us into my 5 key principles, one being nutritional lifestyle, which has dramatically altered my health, changing my diet to this very, very basic plant-based organic diet, which has taken out, I say, all the fun things in life. So my favorite things, AKA dark chocolate, which technically could be considered healthy.
Absolutely. And for many people it is.
And absolutely. But in my case, it speeds up my heart rate. And so there are so many things that I'm sensitive to that I have to part with my dark chocolate for right now.
So there was a line in a play that my daughter was in that said, her line was, my mother told me that you could live to be 100 if you gave up all the things that made you want to live to be 100.
Exactly.
So before we get into your 5 key principles, which I think are fabulous, just tell people briefly the overview of your story. Of course, in the intro, I gave away a lot of the punchlines, but how old were you when this actually began?
When it began, I was 25. So I'm 37 now. It's been a long time. 25 when symptoms started. And they were just getting worse and worse and worse. And as you said, it started with pain and then it turned into shortness of breath. And as a performer, you're getting on stage. And I was starting to notice that just those little steps to actually get onto the stage, forget the performance, just the little steps were leaving me completely breathless. Doctor, until the point of just, I couldn't even make it from my couch to the bathroom. And I had put on 10 pounds of water overnight. This was 5 years after the initial symptoms.
And for those people who are just listening to you as a regular audio podcast and not seeing you, let me just tell them that you're a very petite person.
I am.
I'm very small. For you to put on 10 pounds overnight is remarkable.
It's a huge deal. I'm about 100 pounds. I'm 5'2". I'm little, so everything, 1 pound, it's like, oh, I can see it, 10 pounds was quite, and of course I put on 10 pounds overnight and I'm thinking, what's happening to me? I have no idea what's going on.
Which is 10% of your body weight. So that's extraordinary.
I mean, it was incredible. My stomach, my back, my legs. And of course, my first reaction, instead of going to the hospital, is, oh, let me go walk the dogs. Because clearly that's what you should do when you put on 10 pounds of water. I just thought
overnight.
Maybe overnight. I need to probably just, my body is, I don't know what's happening, but I need to walk. So I take the dogs out. And then I end up about half an hour later, I come home and I'm like, oh, look at that. I'm in heart failure, which I discovered, of course, at the emergency room. But it was so dramatic because although it wasn't dramatic because it was such a buildup, to go from kind of thinking that ultimately you don't feel well, but you're okay because you have no diagnosis, to going into a situation where you're now told you're done. Like there's nothing that can be done. And I was told that I wasn't going to live. And the dramatic news of you only have days left to live. Once I was finally in the ER, in the critical care unit, you go from this life of thinking, oh, I'm going to perform and I don't feel well, but nobody understands and it's okay. Maybe I'm okay, to thinking that your life is over in the course of a few days is quite dramatic. And that's sort of where everything began to shift, of course. Very dramatic.
So the bad news is this story about how so many of these symptoms were missed for the first 5 years that you were having symptoms.
Exactly.
And the bad news is all the mistakes that they made. The good news is that they were also wrong about how long you had to live.
Oh, thank God, literally. I mean, I think that if I had believed what I was told, which is why I believe so much in our minds, I actually don't know if I would be alive. There was so much brainwashing going on with my own mind, with my partner at the time. It was all about rewriting kind of this story that I was being told on a constant basis. You're going to get worse. It's progressive. You're going to die. Seeing so many people out there actually die from pulmonary hypertension, it's very hard, it's very hard to actually believe that you will live. And so I do think it's very dangerous to start believing that you could die. If that makes
I don't
sense.
know why doctors tell patients that. What I always used to say when I was with critical patients is that my crystal ball was broken and I could not predict I couldn't predict anything about the future. I can only talk about what's going on in the present. But what I could talk about is how you could make it better in the future and things that you can do, because of course we always want to feel like something's in our control. And that's what I love about your story. You took this message and you said, okay, what can I control here? The first thing obviously was, and again, for people who are just listening as a podcast, they can't see that you're wearing an oxygen cannula in your nose. You have made it very chic. By next year, everybody's going to want one of these.
Oh God, I hope not.
And speaking of chic, I guess it must have been very, you're a gorgeous woman. and we all have a little bit of vanity. So it must have been, a shock for you to say, okay, I'm going to have this new accessory now. But you really have made it quite a fashionable accessory. And I give you an incredible amount of credit for that. What was the inspiration for saying, okay, I'm going to make this featured in my Instagram posts, and you have amazing photographs. You named it Steve Martin. Where did that come from?
Oh my goodness. Well, this is going to sound really crazy and you're probably going to hang up on me.
We love crazy on this show.
But it's all due to rats.
Okay, that's crazy.
I know it's going to sound crazy. So I'm like the most vain person you can imagine. And I leave the hospital and I'm thinking, I can't wear oxygen. Like I'm going from like, I'm a performer to like, I'm dying, but I'm oxygen and the rest of my life. And so I'm sitting in my living room with my partner at the time and I'm rebelling. I'm like, I'm not going to wear the oxygen. My heart's beating out of my chest. My body is screaming for help. And he's like, okay. So I give him the credit, but of course the rat got the credit in the end. He says, hold on, I need to play something for you. So he plays this video. It was like a 10-minute video on this science experiment because he had been saying, put on your oxygen, and I'm like, I can't do it, So I watched this video and I'm watching them basically do this experiment with rats where within a period of 2 weeks, they deprive the rats of oxygen. Simplest thing in the world. Sure enough, they develop pulmonary hypertension. Then they put the oxygen or give the oxygen back to the rats and pulmonary hypertension disappears. And I'm like, what? Like, this is the simplest possible thing you could have shown me. And what am I doing? Like, if this could have such an effect, forget the fact that it's rats, but what an incredible effect oxygen can have. And literally that little tiny 10-minute video completely altered the way I thought.
How did he even find this?
I have the grace of God is why, because my rebellion was so intense. And he knew that if I could see something that could kind of shift my mind, and I love logical, that sort of thing, that it's like, that happened, that's done, this makes sense. And from that day forward, I literally grabbed my tank, which had no name at the time. And that was it. I put it on and I thought, what am I doing? I'm sitting here, my heart is beating out of my chest. I can't breathe. I can't get up. What am I doing? And then I put it on and just sort of my focus shifted from vanity at that point to really trying to help my body heal. So that was a big deal for me psychologically because vanity is huge. It's huge.
Vanity is huge. People don't want to wear braces because of vanity. People don't want to wear glasses because of vanity. And you have made me confess, I haven't really been vocal about this, but I have a disability where I've been having trouble walking from just a terrible leg injury, not from a disease. So I often have to use a walker in public. But unlike you, I will not be photographed with it. So I go to great lengths to make sure that there's no cane or no walker in my photographs. You have made it the center of your photographs. And I am probably going to compare you now to somebody you never thought you'd be compared to. But seeing the photograph of you planking with your oxygen tank right next to you reminded me of Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Oh, wow.
Has anybody told you this?
That's amazing.
There's a fabulous photo, and actually she made a workout video with her trainer. She's 87 years old, and she's probably about the same size as you are. She's 5'1", I know for sure, and maybe 100 pounds. Mm-hmm. And there she is in this photo planking.
Is she really? I love
Absolutely. That. I will send it to you. It is a fabulous photo. She's also, her accessory in the photo is her very stunning personal trainer.
I love it. No offense, Steve Martin. No offense. Right?
So how did your oxygen tank get named Steve Martin of all things?
As I tell people, this story is really not very good. I was literally sitting down one day looking at this very depressing thing, mm-hmm. thinking, you can't just you're such a part of my life. You must have a name. And Steve Martin, literally, it came out of nowhere. He's, of course, a wonderful, wonderful man who got to meet Steve Martin.
Oh my
I
goodness.
didn't actually meet. It was such a huge
No, this
moment.
is a good story.
Oh, well, that became a good story. The naming was like random. I'm like, okay, I love Steve Martin. He's Steve Martin. We're done. That was it. Steve, there you go. But then at the Vanity Fair party, which I happened to be at, there's Steve Martin. And I'm like, oh my goodness, what a moment. So they actually met. And the man version was very sweet and he said something like, I'm so honored to have been named after a tank.
No, the tank was named after him, in all fairness.
So,
Did you have him autograph your oxygen tank?
No, but it was so sweet that he was taking, he was pretending that the tank came first, which was very sweet.
Now, have you been tempted to bling out your tank?
Oh yeah, he's blung.
We just created breaking news. We just created a new word on in the ladies' room.
Right. That's right. He's been blung.
Why is he a he?
I'm surrounded.
I guess Steve Martin is a he, but was the tank a he before he was named Steve Martin?
I think he was a he. And so I'm surrounded by these, like I say, my little doggy's a boy. Like I'm surrounded by a lot of he's.
Okay,
so
you have a lot of male energy in your environment.
So it just sort of naturally became a he. I'm enough woman in the house, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think you're doing the queen bee thing. You wanted to be the only woman.
I pretend that I'm like, but I'm like, yeah.
Okay, so tell our listeners, let's do pulmonary arterial hypertension 101.
Okay.
And let's do a little bit of educating people because, of course, there are thousands and thousands of students home now. I don't usually give the time period of when we're doing these podcasts, but it is St. Patrick's Day, so that's why I'm wearing green. But also we're in the very beginnings of our coronavirus outbreak. We've got thousands and thousands of students home. So let's educate people, which you are fabulous at. Tell us what people need to know about PAH, pulmonary arterial hypertension, the facts. Go.
Okay. I know.
Nothing like putting you on the spot.
I'm like, oh gosh, I don't even know. But now that you asked me.
I think you know more than most people about this disease.
Sort of the simple version really is that it's a lung disease that affects the heart. And ultimately it's high pressure in the arteries of the lungs that can become blocked or narrow. They can become destroyed and essentially make the right side of the heart have to overwork. So people end up, unfortunately, dying of heart failure when this is coming from the lungs originally. In my case, it is idiopathic, which I sort of believe doesn't exist. Okay,
so let's just tell people what idiopathic means.
So technically no known source in my case.
Right. So, or as one of my medical school professors said to us, idiopathic means I'm an idiot and I don't know what the cause of the pathology is.
Well, I do idiot and pathetic. I'm like, it's what is it? There's something there. We just can't figure it out.
Yeah. So we don't know the cause. There are several known causes of what we call secondary PAH, which can range from other autoimmune diseases to drug use, other problems. And I think the other thing we need to tell people about this condition is it's extremely rare.
It is rare, but crazy enough, it's less rare than we think. It's just because it's so hard to diagnose that it's, I think, more rare than it really is.
And because we don't really think about it. And of course, one of the things we like to talk about in the ladies' room are sex and gender differences. So idiopathic pulmonary arterial hypertension is much more common in women.
Yes, and ironically, PH in general is very common in women. Well, more common in women, and actually near childbearing age, which makes me think, and I'm guessing a lot of other people, that there's a hormonal component with regard to all this. And one of the big debates, of course, is what role hormones actually play. Are they, because women tend to live longer than men, women who have pulmonary hypertension. And is it because of the hormones? However, women tend to get it more than men. So is that because of the hormonal component? So I think all of that is very tricky. And the reason for the difficult diagnosis is because the symptoms mirror the symptoms of so many other diseases, you know, where you have your typical shortness of breath, dry cough, in my case, flu-y symptoms, you have water retention, you have sort of all of these things that could be considered asthma or, you know, an emphysema, or there's so many things that it could be considered. You know, even again, when you were mentioning seeing a psychiatrist, I mean, it's anxiety symptoms as well, you know, where you can't breathe, where you're having chest pain. So it's
although I can tell you, anxiety does not cause fluid retention.
no. Oh my God, no. And when I remember when I heard go see a psychiatrist, I'm like, okay, I would love to go to a psychiatrist and have them say, oh, it's in your head. And I would have loved that, you know, I was all for it. But no.
So did you see a psychiatrist?
Oh, I actually did at one point, because I was at one point, I mean, I would have done anything. As I say, I probably shouldn't even say it out loud, but I was talking about eating horse manure at one point. I was like, if that will cure me, I'll eat horse manure every day, you know?
Let's please make sure everybody knows she's kidding. Do not do this at home.
No, and you can also edit that out. Yeah.
This is not the latest cure for pulmonary arterial hypertension.
No, but when you're so desperate,
right, you would do anything.
You'll do anything to get better. So at that point, you know, nothing seemed.
But I do want to make a public service announcement, interjection about seeing a psychiatrist.
Yes.
Having any kind of chronic illness, especially an undiagnosed chronic illness, is extremely stressful and extremely overwhelming. And many people also become depressed. So seeing a psychiatrist is actually a good thing to deal with the anxiety and depression that comes along with just the angst of not knowing what's going on. It doesn't mean that the problem is quote unquote all in your head. You know, that kind of thinking we want to get away from. So in many chronic illnesses, seeing a psychiatrist or a therapist can be very helpful, as can meditation and exercise and massage therapy or whatever makes you feel better. Exactly. It's not going to be treating your disease, but it may make it easier for you to deal with. And that's a great segue for me to ask you, so how did you go from being given this overwhelming news to developing what you call your 5 key principles for handling your condition?
Well, it was
funny you should ask.
Let's think about that one. How did these come about? And I can't take all the credit because I was with my partner at the time, who's now my best friend in the world. And we really just figured these out, sort of came up with these simple concepts together. And they developed as we went. And it all started with food and research, you know, and thinking, okay, you know, our bodies are made to heal. So something has gone wrong in these 5 categories, let's say, in my mind, in my food, in the way that I communicate with the world, and my passion for life. And something has gone wrong. And it's time to change everything I possibly can about my life because this is not working. So again, we started with food and just research, met with nutritionists, you know, watched one documentary after the other, read one book after the other. And it was this constant plant-based lifestyle that kept coming up. And of course, everybody had their own ideas: eat high fat, eat low fat, eat sugary, fruity, And long story short, the one consistent thing was plant-based. And I was all for the idea of eliminating everything I wondered about. So anything I was questioning, I took out. And it ended up being this very low fat, plant-based diet with specifics of no caffeine, no sugar, aside from fruit sugar, no salt, no alcohol, nothing fun, as I say, but it was over the course of time, absolutely life-changing. And to the point where doctors were wondering, they couldn't understand what was going on because I was getting better and I wasn't supposed to be getting better. And then it turned into this mindset thing where I realized that if I could brainwash myself into believing that I was going to get better, that I was actually going to get better. And I read books again. It was a similar principle to the food situation about people who'd overcome the odds. And I just kept myself inspired, kept the vision boards, kept visualizing myself back on stage, and fought every single thought that would come into my head. For example, I had a bell that my grandmother had given me, this tiny little bell. And every time I had a thought about the fact that I was going to die, basically, I would ring the bell and I would break my thought pattern immediately. And of course, at first, it was ringing. I was ringing the bell literally. I mean, my neighbors would have literally come in there and just wanted to destroy me, but it was ringing, ringing, ringing all day long. And then as time went on, it was ringing less and less. And I would replace these images of me dying with these images that I would choose to put in there, of me running on a beach, of, you know, whatever my images were at the time. So it's keeping my mind in the right place. And then I started ringing my bell. I barely was ringing my bell, which was a huge deal, especially for the neighbors. And then exercise, of course, which at the time was literally me walking from the living room to the bathroom. Like, that was a huge thing.
All right. So I want to really underscore that for people, because we've talked about a lot of different health conditions on this podcast. And many people get very angry with doctors when they have a chronic disease and they recommend exercise. And they say, you know, what part of I can't walk from here to the other side of the room do you not understand? So what exercise means is stressing your body a little bit. It doesn't mean you have to go to the gym for 2 hours. And sometimes exercise means walking from the bedroom to the bathroom.
That's right.
And if you can do it to the bedroom and the bathroom and back,
Exactly.
that's a really good thing. But I have to interrupt this train of thought, because I know everybody who is listening to something you said a couple of minutes ago is screaming at me to ask, what happened to the guy? He showed you a rat video, which changed your life. You said he was your best friend in the whole world, and he helped you come up with the 5 principles that changed your life. So why is he an ex?
Well, he is.
We talk about everything in the ladies' room.
No. Oh, and there's, by the way, I'm the most open person you can, honestly, like, there's nothing you can't ask me ever. He's my best friend in the entire world, Marvin Acuna, who I call Hunter. Mm-hmm. He calls me Prey, and he's always going to be Hunter, and I'm always Prey. But we were together for about 6 years. Most wonderful man you could ever know, ever. And he's my best friend, and it just turned into, like, I'm bringing the tissues out. I'm like, I'm going to be pulling.
I've got the tissues out.
I of course have toilet paper, because, you know, our conversation with toilet paper.
Yeah, you probably shouldn't have revealed that. People are going to go storm your house now to take your toilet paper.
I only have one roll. You come from me. Just the most wonderful person. It just didn't. I'm with somebody now who's also a wonderful person. I'm very, very, very lucky that what I call these people angels in my life, because the men that have come into my life have been incredible at the right time, and it's amazing. So I'm very lucky with regard to this, but I
feel like Hunter.
Well, I feel like Hunter too, and he's around.
I will tell you one of my favorite quotes. I don't know the source. So if anybody knows the source, please email me. The quote goes like this: at your wedding, kiss your best friend goodbye. Unless, of course, your best friend is of the opposite sex, in which case you married the wrong person. Now, the opposite sex part, this is an old quote. So it was
right at this point
when people only married people of the opposite sex. So we have to update the quote, you know, for
marry whomever. Yeah, exactly.
For a more modern audience. But anyway, that's all I'm going to say. As somebody who's old enough to be your mother, that's all I'm going to say. Well, my kids will tell you, I always say that. Every time I'm about to launch into something, I always say, that's all I'm going to say.
That's it, right? Then it keeps going, right? No, but I feel like I'm...
For the next 6 years.
Exactly. I shouldn't say the following, but I feel like I'm with all of them, if that makes any sense, in very different ways.
Nothing wrong with that.
I mean, to me, there's so much a part of my life. Dave, who I'm with now, Hunter, like... I'm just surrounded by these wonderful people. So I'm just very grateful for that.
There's no limit on how much love you can have in your life.
That's what I'm going to say next time they catch me in the act.
And we did a podcast with Shan Booty about being in open relationships. So you can think about that too.
With everyone, why not? You know, at this point. I mean, my goodness, just live your life, be happy, and enjoy. Everybody's very
Absolutely.
serious about everything. I tend not to be all that serious about many things.
Well,
You know,
that's a good thing. And clearly clearly it's gotten you this far. But I think that does minimize some of the incredible work that you're doing. So tell us about your foundation.
well, my foundation was established originally because of the Smile Tour. So a wonderful, wonderful 8-year-old girl named Humaira Bodania. Unfortunately, the terrible story is that she died now about 2 years ago. I think it's been 2 years.
Now I need
That
my tissues again.
I know. Well, it's just that at this point I'm like, ugh. I mean, it's so unbelievable that, and specifically to mention that in these kids, it's very difficult because they don't have approved treatments. I think they have one approved treatment for kids at this point, but it's really difficult with kids with pediatric pulmonary hypertension. And in this case, Humaira died, and a lot of kids do, but you know, people have, of course, different effects on you than others do. And her death was just had this huge, huge impact and kind of changed everything. And I thought, what am I doing? How can I, like, what can I do? I'm always thinking of what I can do that I'm not doing. And she inspired an entire kind of world inside of me, which I turned into this thing called the Smile Tour. And it became all about visiting hospitals throughout the country, performing for kids, and just sort of, you know, putting smiles on their faces, but reminding them ultimately that they can get out of the hospital, that they can, you know, instilling hope, and sort of bringing that feeling of you can do anything, you know, and going in there with oxygen and performing to sort of show them that that's something they could potentially do too. And so all of this,
And being gorgeous and fabulous and literally a rock star. You know, so we haven't really talked much about your music. And I know I still want to hear the rest of the foundation story, but if it's related to the Smile Tour, which is kind of happening now, we need to talk first about the several albums that you've created. And you're a singer-songwriter, not just a singer. And you're a singer who relies on oxygen to breathe. So tell us, how does that work?
well, I'll throw in another one, which is actually the one that makes it the most difficult, is that throughout all of this, I ended up with a paralyzed left vocal cord, which again, we're not sure of the source, but that's what makes the singing actually much more difficult even than the breathing.
Did that happen after you were intubated for one of your procedures?
It literally just happened in the studio one day. This was as things were getting worse and worse and worse.
Got it.
And nobody could figure things out. All of a sudden one day I'm in the studio, I'm singing, I'm like, what is going on? Like, I can't, it was like this thing was taking apart my body one organ at a time, essentially. And all of a sudden my voice was now gone. So then, of course, I go to the doctor and he's like, your left vocal cord's paralyzed. And so I had to wait a year to see if it would come back. And a year later, they're like, your nerves are dead. It's never coming back. So I had to have a surgery on my vocal cord where they put, which is incredible, they can do this, but they put an implant behind my voice box.
Wow.
To give you sound, because otherwise it's just a tiny little whisper. And of course they do the operation with you awake, which is really wonderful. They cut your throat open and you have to be awake because you have to actually speak during the procedure. So they've got your throat open, you're speaking, you're singing, you're making decisions, you're half here, half gone. Long story short, thank God they did it because it gave me back a voice. Again, I was told I wouldn't be able to sing again, but I figured if I can speak, I can sing, you know, because there's always sort of a way for me in the back of my head. And that became the trickiest thing with regard to performing and to singing. But so
maybe somebody told these doctors that you're the type of person where if they tell you you can't do something, you will figure out how to make it happen.
Well, it's funny because I never sort of thought of myself as that kind of, I don't feel myself to be that way. I'm not sort of trying to prove. I remember one doctor said that, she's like, are you going to go prove to us the, and I thought, I'm actually not. I just really do.
What would your mom say?
She would actually agree with me. It's not even a matter of proving to, and it's just a matter of feeling like there's always a way. I really feel that as long as I'm breathing, I feel somehow that there's a way. And I much prefer to prove people right in the way of people that believe in me. I'm like, oh, I just want to show them that they were right to believe in me, you know, instead of proving other people wrong. It's not as much about that for me. I just really do believe that there's always a way, you know, but it takes work. And boy, rebuilding my voice, that was a lot of work. And getting myself to the point where I could get back on stage, you know, was a lot of work. And we, for example, we have these shows, and somebody came up to me at one point and they're like, what a great idea. We love, you know, that you play a video before you sing, and really gets us, you know, we can get to know you. And I thought, wow, I got them. I fooled them. I said, but you know, the truth is the reason we play the video is because while you're watching the video, I'm climbing up onto the stage. I'm breathing for like a solid minute. I'm sitting at the piano. I'm composing. So I need all that time, you know, to be able to perform. And they think I'm just showing a video. So I need that video, you know. So it's all sort of strategizing and, again, finding a way to make things work for you. And I do think that there's always a way. And of course, it's more difficult sometimes, but it doesn't mean it's impossible.
So I did look at some of your videos over time, and I noticed in some of the earlier videos that I saw, you were playing the guitar and kind of dancing around while you sang a bit. And the more recent videos, I've just seen you sitting at the piano. So do you not play the guitar anymore, or because it is more physically demanding, and sitting at the piano is also sitting?
I do play guitar. I still play both. But I do sit more now. I think that if I'm standing, I tend to move around a lot more because I'm just used to that. But I switch it up, you know, and when I'm feeling better, I get up and I do switch it up. But sitting forces me to kind of breathe, you know, with both piano and guitar.
So at the time of your diagnosis, had you already recorded the first album?
Oh, yes. So I'd recorded quite a bit of music.
Okay.
And then when I was diagnosed, it was really Be Brave, the album Be Brave, that kind of came out. And truthfully, I mean, it sounds all cheesy, but I was like, I really don't know how much time I have left to live. And I feel like I have so many things that I want to say. So I'd lock myself in a room and I just went crazy with writing music.
And it was a short time after you got out of the
It was right then and there. I went right into the room. And that was, again, my mind. I was like, I don't want to deal with all that. I want to go into my world of creative expression, which is my other key principle, and focus on what I love to do, you know, and my passion. And I wrote, everybody sort of says, well, who's this song for? And who's this song to? And the truth is, I'm like, I wrote this song to myself. Like, Be Brave. I mean, as much as I'd like to say I wrote it for someone else, it really wasn't. I was trying to give myself a message. And I think that because it was that, you know, that perhaps is why it can resonate with someone else, because it was so sincerely to myself. And I've seen that it has, and that's very meaningful to me, that it's been able to translate, you know, to other people and to mean something to them as well. But yes, mass writing mode is what happened.
Yeah, it's basically writing a pep talk to yourself.
That's right.
It's your version of writing a diary or a journal. So I once heard Oprah ask John Legend if, when he makes out, if he plays John Legend songs to make out to. When you need a pep talk, do you have a playlist of other people's music, or do you play your own music?
No, if I have that moment where I need, and we're talking about like spiritual, if I'm having that is 100% gospel music.
Okay.
I have my little playlist of a couple songs that I never even talk about, that are because I was brought up, my father used to bring me to a Baptist church in Harlem on the weekends. And so I was always surrounded by gospel music, and it's my favorite style of music. And so I have my little, what I call my secret Chloé playlist. And when all hell breaks loose, I just disappear. And that's where I go. And that's my therapy, basically.
So how did you get into music in the first place, aside from going to the Baptist church, or is that where it started?
That might have been where it started. I mean, truthfully, that's where I went. I spent so much time, listening to music growing up. And then I joke, because I come from a family that makes no music, but my father can whistle on pitch. I was always surrounded by music. Started singing in church.
Are you from Harlem originally?
No, I'm not. I mean, I'm from New York.
Uh-huh.
But I just, it became this thing, and it wasn't for religious. There was no sort of, we were not religious. We were just,
It was for the music.
a spiritual experience, and it was unbelievable, and it was for the music. And I would sit there 6 years old with my mouth wide open, memorizing all these songs. And, one day I ended up on stage singing at an age that you don't know that you're supposed to be nervous about singing. So I'm like, all right, off I go. And then my father, of course, would take me to these little jazz clubs in Harlem when I was way too young to even get in. Like he would sort of sneak me in, and then I would start singing, and I was always singing. And of course, Summertime was my song in the jazz. Always Summertime, everywhere I went. It's the only song I knew, and I only knew 3 words. Mm-hmm. But it was just always sort of music. And there was never a moment where I was like, I'm going to make music. It just always was in my life. And then I just started writing, picking up instruments and listening to the radio. And then I'd go in my room and I'm like, I could figure out how to do that, And so I'd play, and it just was always there, music.
And so you play the piano, you play the guitar, any other instruments?
The fiddle. No.
The recorder.
Exactly. I played nothing else. Yeah. The spoons.
And I also understand you speak, you're fluent in French and Spanish also.
I am.
So how'd that
go
happen?
on about me. Just go on. How did that? So I am half French. My father's French, born in Paris. And so I was always, as I say, I joke, I was always yelled at in French. So I know that is the most true language probably for me. But I was growing up much more comfortable even in French than English. So I speak French like I do English, and then Spanish kind of developed over time. All my friends spoke Spanish in New York, and I kind of, because of French, started speaking Spanish, kind of street New York Spanish. And then I ended up going to Spain for a year to live with a family in high school, which was amazing. So my broken New York Spanish became a little bit more formal, which was great. And that was a wonderful experience. So languages have always come to me, and I've always enjoyed being able to communicate,
And of course, music is your first language.
There it is. Exactly.
Your primary language.
Exactly.
In terms of your artistic expression, I have to say I was really blown away by the video that you made for Breathe. Tell us about that and how you developed the concept for that.
So the song, we started with the song, I wrote that song with Toby Gad, who is probably today one of the most well-known songwriters of our time, which is incredible. This man is the nicest man who has never let his incredible now celebrity get to him in any way, has more respect for artists than I could imagine. And the amazing thing about this song is he had said to me when I was really not well, he checked in and he said, hey, do you want to come out to LA? Because I want to help you and I want to write a song with you for your cause, And at that point, that was one of those moments where I couldn't move. I could not move. And I was like, oh my God, I really want to go do this.
How did you meet him?
Oh, I met him when I think I was 16 in New York through a manager it was sort of a random meeting, but I'd known him for quite a while before, and we'd written together before, but he just kind of started writing with everyone, and he was writing with John Legend, he was writing with Fergie, he was writing with, and I'm like, oh my gosh, but just so down to earth. And then he put this thought in my head. He's like, you got to come out to LA. Let's write this song, and I can't even move at the time. I cannot move. So I'm like, how am I going to get from my couch where I can't move? I have acne, by the way, all over my face.
That's the worst.
My face is moon face out to here from prednisone. I'm like, how am I I can't even go to the corner store, So long story short, I put it in my head again. So there was the visualization, and I thought, all right, I got to get out to LA, got to perform. So about a year later, it took a long time, I got to the point where I could travel, ended up in LA. We wrote the song together. And then it became all about, creating a video that could involve the community. And I'm so connected to children in general. I feel like I am 5 years old and I'm just pretending that I'm older. And I think I'll feel like that for the rest of my life. But I'm definitely a kid. And I just
37 is the new
oh
5.
my God, I'm literally 5 years. I'm if you knew, it's all a joke that I'm older, but I'm just pretending to be older. Um, but it all became about kids and how we can sort of both bring awareness to this disease and make kids sort of feel as though they're they're having their own celebrity moment and they're in a video, just sort of put us all together. And I love things that involve the community essentially, and I love things specifically that involve kids. So everybody kind of sent in their videos, and we just wanted to involve everyone. And so that's sort of how the whole thing started, and was put together. And then we sort of picked the pieces that worked and brought all these kids together to create this video. And it's just, I'm so happy about how it came out. It's so real, it's all these sweet kids that.
So I want everybody to look the video up on YouTube. It's called Breathe. Chloé Temtchine. Say it again, Temtchine.
So close. Yeah,
Temtchine. I got it.
Temtchine is not bad, actually. And the funny thing is, I think my name is Russian from Temtchine or something. So you're actually probably
That's what I was trying to say.
There you go. Yeah, you're actually probably more correct than I am,
So I want everybody to watch this video. How many kids were in it?
Ooh, I honestly have no idea. Probably about.
Did they all have PAH?
They all do. Yeah.
It's really very, very moving. Really pretty spectacular. So now that we've gotten through like the music questions, I do want to get back to your new single, Someday. Love the message there, live now, seize the moment, carpe diem, don't let it pass you by. But tell me now about the Smile Tour and the foundation.
So the Smile Tour, and here we can relate now to the coronavirus, which is so unfortunate, but I was supposed to be heading out, March, at the end, like basically at the end of this month, to do a cross-country version of the Smile Tour from Los Angeles to New York, which right now has been completely put on hold. And the Smile, so to relate it back to the foundation, the way that essentially the foundation was created so that I could do things like the Smile Tour.
And the foundation is called?
Foundation is the Chloé Temtchine Foundation.
I knew that. I just didn't want to have to say Temtchine again.
Chloé Temtchine Foundation, and it's really there so that we can basically fund things like the Smile Tour. So we rely on funding from companies, from grants, pharmaceutical companies, people who want to donate, anybody and anybody who wants to sort
You're
of.
Not proud. You take money from anywhere.
I'm like, bring it on.
You take money from PACs and from billionaires.
Anyone. Yeah. I'll take money from whoever wants to help us, But it's just amazing because it allows us to do what we love to do.
We have lots of billionaires who listen to this podcast, so I'm sure they'll all be looking at the website right now.
Foundation, go crazy. But and I'm in the process right now actually of building something called Super Brave, which is all about empowering kids who are dealing with chronic illness, pulmonary hypertension and beyond. So there are a lot of these ventures that I'm creating via the Chloé Temtchine Foundation. So that's sort of the hub that is able to fund all of these things. And the mission is always twofold. One, to bring awareness to PH, or PAH, I should say, and they're both.
So PH being pulmonary hypertension, and pulmonary arterial hypertension, I know you know this, I'm just explaining to everybody else, is a subset of pulmonary hypertension. So we've got PH is the overarching condition, and PAH is a subset of that.
Yes, and the idea exactly is to bring awareness to pulmonary hypertension and to essentially bring hope to people that are in need of hope, and to remind people, again, as corny as it sounds, but to remind people that they can pursue their dreams despite their challenges. And that's always the message I hope to be able to share with people.
And that wearing an oxygen tank is cool.
Exactly, as long as you name him, and they're always,
or her. This is not a sexist show.
Yeah, I love it. I'm always like him, you know? I know. I have like all my little paraphernalia. They're all boys, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's talk about how the coronavirus has changed and affected your life in the short term. I spent way too much time on Twitter, as all my listeners know. And there's been a thread trending this week with the hashtag COVID-19 high risk or high risk COVID-19, where people are posting their stories about how they have high risk, mostly respiratory illnesses, or people who are getting chemotherapy, who have immunosuppression, people who've had liver transplants, lung transplants, other organs transplanted, kidney transplants, people who are immunocompromised for other reasons, posting about how they are extremely high risk and just letting people know that even though they might be healthy and they might not be symptomatic, they could be asymptomatic carriers passing it on to the rest of us. And this is why self-isolation and staying home, or another one of my favorite threads is the hashtag stay the F home. So talk to us about what this means for you personally in terms of your concerns about coronavirus.
Well, it's been a very, very weird time because we're in an Airbnb out in LA. I'm in a very different area. I don't really know my area. We just moved in here.
Why are you in an Airbnb?
The story is it's like a 5-hour story, really. So I won't bore you with too many details, but we've been living in LA. Our lease was up and we were actually supposed to be heading back to New York, but thought we'd stay here one more month. And truthfully, it was because I was planning on doing IVF because I have a doctor out here and everything was sort of set up. And that was part of the plan.
IVF, in vitro fertilization.
Exactly. And that was for the intention of essentially just freezing my eggs at this point, because when you have pulmonary hypertension, it's very dangerous to carry your own baby, to become pregnant. So the thought was, all right, let's just freeze what we've got and then head back to New York was the plan via the Smile Tour.
Let's get these eggs on ice. And
I mean, I love that the story, you asked the question, the story can it's like a novel over here, you know?
Well, speaking of novel, when's the book coming out? Because this is a novel. It's a historical novel.
Exactly. I know. Oh my gosh.
We want the scoop. We want breaking news here.
Because every time you ask me a question, I'm like, well, then I was going to have a baby, and then I'm ending up in New York, and there's the virus, and there's one thing after the other. But basically, so IVF has been put on hold. We're kind of stranded out here. Can't kind of do anything at this point. Can't travel. We're in an Airbnb. Can't take a plane back to New York, which was the goal after IVF. Can't really do IVF because that would involve me being out in the world and going to the doctor and going into Lyfts and Ubers. And so everything's completely put on hold. The answer to everything you're going to ask me is I don't know, because I don't know where anything is going and what's happening. But I am very isolated right now. My boyfriend is actually not even living in this unit. He's in a hotel. But the story continues to thicken, but because of work and because of stuff. So he ended up in a hotel for 4 or 5 days. He's very scared to come back. He's supposed to come back tomorrow. And he's petrified because he's what if I have it, but I don't know, and it's 5 days, and our doggy is
right. And just for the purpose of people who might be listening to this 4 weeks from now or 8 weeks from now, when hopefully we'll have tests available, I don't want anybody to say at this point in the story, well, why doesn't he just get tested? Because right now, and that's why I said this is St. Patrick's Day, now on March 17th, 2020, we don't have testing available, even for people who are actually sick. Right now, only people who are really sick in the hospital or NBA basketball players are able to get
should have become one of those, you know.
NBA basketball players or major film stars in other countries.
Exactly.
And I don't want to make light of the fact that Tom Hanks and Idris Elba have been, tested as positive, and I give them incredible credit for coming forward and talking and sharing their stories, because it does give people the sense that, wow, if Idris Elba, who's 47 years old, and as far as I know, extremely healthy, can get this, what does that mean for somebody with a severe chronic respiratory illness?
And I worry about the testing in itself, because if he were, for example, to go get tested, and I don't know enough about this, but I think he would be surrounded again by people. And I'm thinking,
exactly,
stay away, just stay away. So
you're doing the right thing, because what I've been saying to people is because we don't have mass testing available, and the test is not 100% effective for a negative result. When you get a positive result, it's very reliable. But a negative result, it's not 100% reliable. So until we have a test available, we have to consider that anybody who has not been self-isolating is infected. That doesn't mean they are infected. We just have to treat them as though they are.
Exactly. He's not going to be getting a lot of love from me.
Well, there's lots of different ways you can show love.
Exactly. Via text message,
And that's somebody, very few people are talking about the sexual transmission of coronavirus.
Oh, okay. Exactly.
And of course,
Yeah.
this took us a really long time in this interview to get to talking about sex, which we usually talk about in the first 5 minutes of the interview.
Now it starts for real.
Now this just got real. Most people aren't talking about the sexual transmission, but the number one sexual way to communicate this is just kissing.
Right.
And so I said the only way that I know that you can have sex while practicing the appropriate level of social distancing is either phone sex,
right, exactly,
texting,
exactly,
or doing it yourself.
These are the big troubles of today. How are we going to do this? I know. Well, he's freaking out just coming home because he's so scared to hurt me. He's like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
But he can't afford to essentially to just continue living in this hotel forever. And I mean, I don't know. We'll figure all this out, of course. But I'm just happy dogs, from what I understand, can't get it or transmit it, because I can't be away from my dog for much longer.
Well, and that's how you can get your cuddles.
Well, exactly. Of all people that must come home, it's my dog,
Aww.
So they're all coming back tomorrow. So the answer is, I don't know. I have no idea what we're going to do. There's a tiny little market on the corner, and that's where I've been going to get my food. And I go and I kind of look around and make sure nobody's coughing, and I grab my stuff.
So you're in LA. Why are you going to get food as opposed to having food delivered?
Very truthfully, because where I'm staying right now is so weirdly located that nobody can find my unit. So every time I have something delivered, it ends up like 5 houses down. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking for my food all the time. So I've given up. I literally just gave up. And we're upstairs too. So I'm up and down and up, and it's like too much for my literally.
That's a lot of exercise for you.
Oh my gosh. The other day, it was like an hour and a half to try to find my food.
Yeah. So I will tell you, there are organizations popping up. I'm not familiar with what's in LA, but certainly in New York, there are amazing groups of people who are making themselves available to do errands like getting food for people like yourself who, shouldn't be going out and can't be going up and down the stairs and those sorts of things. So your homework is to Google around and find out one of those groups in your area. So anyway, we are at the end of our time. I could talk to you all day. I definitely can't wait to read the book. But what I want to hear about before I let you go, I ask every guest we have about what was your most unique, interesting, different, or memorable experience that you ever had in a ladies' room.
I forgot about this. And as I was saying, I mean, there are so many ladies' room stories. It's incredible. I'm probably going to give you one that's like, doesn't do justice to anything. But I remember at one point going in with, for any woman out there who's worn a one-piece jumpsuit, you will know where the story is going. Where I literally, between the oxygen, the one-piece jumpsuit, my sweater, my jacket, it was like 7 hours to go to the bathroom. And I decided on that day, somebody should invent. So please, somebody out there listening, please invent a little zipper for those wearing a one-piece jumpsuit so that we can go to the bathroom, because standing in the middle of this toilet where everybody's of course waiting for you, pressuring you to come out, you've got 35 layers to take off, and then you're butt naked, you have no clothes on. Take off your top, take off your this, and you're sitting there trying to just pee for 5 seconds. And of course with the oxygen, like everything's a huge effort and it's energy, and I'm breathing and it sounds like I'm dying in the stall and I'm just trying to pee. So that's one of 10 billion bathroom stories.
Finish the story. Where did the top of the one-piece outfit go?
Onto the floor. I mean, the
Oh,
whole
okay.
thing,
I thought it was going into the toilet, which
yeah, no,
it
it would have been better. You know, I mean, I've had where my oxygen cannula falls in the toilet. Oh, it's terrible. Okay. I'm not even going to tell you about that one. But no, as I say, we could go on for days with this one, but this is my most, this one was pretty unique at how long it took. I couldn't believe how long it took in this stall, you know, with my clothing. Yeah. So we need somebody to invent a zipper jumpsuit, please.
Well, we just interviewed the woman who invented the sports bra. So if she could invent the sports bra, we will get back in touch with her and Lisa Lindahl, and we will see if she could do something about your onesie. But I'm thinking the tailor down the street from you in the dry cleaner place could probably also just engineer something.
Exactly. Not to mention the amount of phones that have fallen in the toilet too. Everything seems to happen in the bathroom, you know.
So anyway, I could talk to you all day, and I know our listeners could listen to you all day. Tell people where they can find out more about how fascinating you are.
Well, thank you for that. The best place to go is chloetemtchine.com.
And spell it for people.
CHLOETEMTCHINE.com.
Okay. Thank you so much, Chloé, for joining us in the ladies' room. We are looking for your tour to resume when coronavirus is finally defeated. And we are expecting all kinds of fun things from you in the future. And I want to read the book. And then I want to see the movie of the book. That will be awesome.
Well, thank you so much for this. I really appreciate it. It was great.
Thank you for joining us. Take care.
Soon. Bye-bye.
That's all we have time for today. But let's keep the conversation going on Twitter or Facebook at Dr. Donica. And please join us next week for another episode of In the Ladies' Room with Dr. Donica. Real conversations with real women about really intimate topics.